You're here, which means that you've found Spirit Crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us. Hello. Welcome to another Cosmic Energy Report. I'm Andrea from Spirit Crumbs and Concrete and Crystals.
And I'm Emily from Emily and Her Stars and Things That Make You Go Woo. We are so excited to invite you to our halfway 2024 Cosmic Energy.
I am very excited for this. So many of you know, if you listened to the first one from January to June, it was called Gaining Light. And this one for the back half of the year is called Inviting Shadow, as we have less and less light each day.
We actually have already recorded this one.
Yeah.
And in full disclosure, it was amazing. And it also vanished. So this is an attempt to recreate what was once the most magical podcast episode we've recorded. And we're going to make this one just as good, right?
We're going to try our best. And our intention is out there. We set the intentions that it's going to be the same kind of magic and that we're going to be open to it. Despite how angry we are inside, we are going to try to release the anger and invite in the magic for this episode.
Nothing bothers two cautiously optimistic earth signs more than losing an entire podcast episode that they were feeling pretty good about.
We were. Maybe it was just we were meant to record in this particular energy. We're really close to a full moon. Maybe there's something happening in the cosmos that we are meant to pick up on today.
And I would like to use this as an opportunity to remind you all to back up your files. We will still be having 2 more Mercury retrogrades this year. Make sure you've got your stuff saved, your computers taken care of. Just take the half a day and make sure all your stuff is where it needs to be.
Agreed. I think that is a good cautionary tale to everyone to not trust Zoom.
For PSA for the year.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the first episode, we really focused on what was eclipse season of March and April, and I think it lived up to the hype. What do you think?
I agree. I think even more so. I was already prepared thinking, okay, eclipse season last year, both eclipse seasons hit us pretty hard. And I was like, all right, I'm getting myself all ready. I'm in the stance. I'm ready for it. But I was not ready for it. I think mine also hit me a couple days later both times. It wasn't like on the eclipse. It was a couple days later. It was a bit of a delayed reaction. So I thought I had escaped it and then got hit extra hard. And also, one of the interesting things I will say with it being on this new axis, the Libra Aries axis, is that where I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's going to be something to do with like clearing out relationships from like romantic things or this and that. It was just other relationships, and it was different ways things were showing up. It was my relationship to different things. It was a lot of different energies. So I think as much, it's just that caution of like, you can try to prepare, but you don't know what is going to be coming up for you, and you don't know what's going to be activated by these transits. So there's no sense living in fear of eclipse season. And I think that's the whole thing is like, sometimes it will hit you, sometimes it won't. And you just don't know what to expect. And I think that's where what Emily has said before, like expect the unexpected, is because you literally cannot prepare for it. You can be aware and be aware of things as they're coming up and know that perhaps the eclipse is bringing these things to the surface for a reason, but you can't be like, I know that this is what's going to be activated because it's this point in my chart. So I'm going to have a relationship issue with this person and we're going to deal with it. Like, unfortunately, as much as we try to plan as earth signs, we cannot plan the cosmos.
And that's the best description. Truly, I think I completely fell prey to that exact thing. I thought, okay, this is where it's happening in my chart. I've been doing so much deep work. I've been processing things. Like yes, something inevitably will come up with the relationship, but it will be fine. I'll be able to work through it. My catastrophic event happened right in between the 2 eclipses, like let's split the difference. And not only was it completely hidden and subconscious, but it was life altering and definitely part of what I think Chiron brought to the entire episode. This something that's hidden that you're not aware of that we're going to make super prominent so that you can no longer avoid it. And also here, can you heal it quickly? Because we need to keep moving on.
It's like anything. When you're in it, of course, you're not going to enjoy it. You're in it. But now on the other side of it, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I wrapped that up. I'm glad I had that conversation. I'm glad I went through that. And like now I have some clarity. And I think that's what Taurus season was for me. I don't know about you, Emily, but this Taurus to Gemini, that transition has been a lot of clarity of what I need to do. Like I just actually took a day to myself yesterday because I was like, I had some unexpected stuff come up. And I was like, instead of pushing through it like I normally do, I'm just going to be like, I'm not going to be productive. I was spinning my wheels for 2 days thinking I was busy, but I wasn't getting anything done because I was avoiding just feeling the feelings. And now today I'm on the other side of it and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get some work done again. I think it's, we have to learn to go with the energy as it's coming up and not try to plan so much, not try to plan around the energy we can't predict. But I think that clarity has been coming over the last couple of weeks.
I also feel like that entire 6 months episode was a bit of a finale for 2023 energy in some way, because we had basically all of the planets outside of Mars, Mercury, Venus, because they are constantly moving, but everything outside of that had remained the same. We haven't brought in any new big energy in quite a while. And so things felt very stagnant, isn't maybe the right word, but it was a definite continuation of what we were already used to. But the energy that we experienced with that eclipse sort of put a punctuation mark on it, an exclamation point, maybe a question mark, depends. But it was an opportunity for, I think, a chapter as well to close in some new ways. So as we are thankfully starting to usher out Jupiter, as we're recording this, Jupiter will be moving into Gemini on May 25th. And this is the first time we're going to have an outer planet switching into something new. And while this is not quite past summer solstice, it will affect the second half of the year in a really profound way.
Yeah, I think any new energy at this point, I think that's why so many of us people are commenting, like, why does it feel like we're still in 2020? Why does it feel like we're still in 2021? Like, why am I still dealing with the same things? I think anything that shifts your whole life, even if you make a decision really quickly, the repercussions and getting into a new routine and getting into like a new feeling of it and making it feel normal takes a while. So that totally makes sense.
Well, what do you think? Should we go into the tarot cards that you pulled and get started with? Let's start with July and we'll just see how things go.
I think we should. So I'm going to do a quick recap, which I did the last time we recorded, but here we are again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to list the first 6 cards, and then that way we'll have an idea of what we've moved through already, and then we'll get into July. So for January, we had the Ace of Cups. We were starting off the year with some new energy in emotions and relationships. And then in February, we had the moon, number 18. And so that is a major arcana. So that was a big energy around what's hidden, what we need to go deep and find in ourselves. And then in March, we had the star, number 17, which if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that this started last year in Cancer season when it showed up as a beacon of hope. And so this was showing up for us in March this year as we went into eclipse season. And then in April, we had the 6 of Wands, which is victory and celebration and being seen. In May, which we are technically in right now as we're recording, we had the 7, the Chariot, another major arcana, which is fast movement and making big decisions. And then in June, we have number 5, the Hierophant, another major arcana, which is tradition and the teacher. And also it's a 5, so it's a change energy. So a lot of times at this point, the way we view it often in modern tarot is changing traditional beliefs and thinking about finding wisdom from within and becoming the teacher. So for July, we're starting out with another ace. So as we start these next 6 months, we're starting out with the Ace of Wands. So we're moving from water to fire. And one of the themes I noticed is for this whole year, I didn't pick up any earth or any air. So we're very much going between water and fire, which do not traditionally get along well. So these really extreme energies, this I do know we talked about last time. There's extreme energies between the emotions and the debts and the grieving of the old, and then this fiery energy of passion moving us forward into the new. And so what was coming through for this, I there was a word that came up with each card for me. And for this one, it was insight. And the phrase specifically was sacred insight. And so this fire energy going into the summer, and I think because July also starts Leo season, I feel like there is going to be a bit of a spark. So even though it's a water season when we're in Cancer season, it does make its way into more of a fire energy near the end of the month. So while you're in Cancer season, try to really lean into that intuitive side and the stillness, because that's where we're going to find a lot of the inspiration, those secret insights. It's going to be from staying in that energy of self and really being inward, because then Leo season is going to be pulling us out back into the open again. So focus on family and home and those inner energies, because now we're getting to know the new version of ourselves, is what the main message was for this card. So this Ace of Wands, this new beginning, it's like the sparks of creativity, the sparks of inspiration of like how we're going to become this new person moving forward. So everything we've just learned in all of this eclipse season, all of this clarity we're getting as we move through Taurus and Gemini season, Gemini is bringing in more inspiration as well. It's just this opportunity to really decide, if I'm going to be this new version of myself, how am I going to move that forward? And there's a really strong energy around the solar plexus with this. So confidence and seeing the growth, and maybe already recognizing how you are reacting differently to how you would have before, and how that growth is because you've let yourself do the work and you've been open to seeing things in a new way. And then what I'm really feeling into with this energy of the insights we're getting is that it's the beginning of something. And what I was feeling is that later into fall is where you might start to see how this is playing out, and like where this energy you're putting into things, what's going to be the harvest from that later on in the cycle. But I just want to note that, yeah, this is going to be a similar feeling, hopefully, but it's going to feel more, as opposed to like January in the beginning of the year, feeling like we're just processing a lot and starting to like deal with our emotions differently. This will actually feel like you're going to be doing something with the energy. It'll feel like a spark to actually see yourself acting on things. There's more of like an action oriented creativity with it, as opposed to the inward focus.
I want to back up just a touch and talk about solstice in particular, because while, of course, the sun itself is going to move into Cancer at 4:51 Eastern on June 20th, it's immediately followed the very next day on June 21st by one of two Capricorn full moons. And it's a little unusual to have back-to-back full moons in the same sign. And it happens because it's literally like the first day and the last day of Cancer season, a full moon falls. So they will both be Capricorn. So we have the first one on June 21st and the second one on July 21st. So these are bookends for Cancer season. And on top of this sort of spark of creativity and this newness, the very first thing that happens around the 29th-ish of June is Saturn goes retrograde in Pisces. Now, Saturn has been in Pisces for a while. It hasn't finished its tour there yet. But when it does this reversal, it can be a bit of a reality check, or it can allow you to access that creativity and dreams more readily. Both options are possible. It will depend a little bit on your placements. So something to be aware of for the next 6 months. It really stays there through November, and it's an opportunity for you to lean into what creative sparks are coming down the pipeline. Now, starting in July, we have Neptune then stationing retrograde. That happens on July 3rd. This again is going to drive the dreams and creativity inward. Mercury will enter Leo on July 3rd. This is interesting because, like, you were speaking to that spark, that thing that lights us up. We don't usually get that much fire in a water season, but having Mercury roll into Leo early will have our mindsets moving fast and moving in a way that we want to experience and really get in touch with the creativity and the side of ourselves that we sometimes put on the shelf. And when you have that influence combined with the Cancer, it's like, do I have enough time to do that? Am I going to disappoint someone if I do that? Where do the boundaries fall between what I want and my summer and what the collective need or have time for? Family, friends, all of those things come into questions. Venus then enters Leo right behind it on the 12th of July. So again, this is going to be now your heart space is wanting even more and more to get closer to that. Mars will finally enter Gemini on July 21st. This will help to stabilize and slow some things down. We will have had Mars in Taurus kind of plodding along, but Mars in Gemini will help to encourage you to try those out of the box thinking and out of the box ways while still giving you the amplification of production in some way. The sun will enter Leo on July 23rd. Then we'll have that amplification of fire. And then Mercury strolls into Virgo on July 26th. Now, what's interesting about this, we'll have a pretty quick, just about 23 days of Mercury in Leo. Once Mercury hits Virgo, everything slows down, and we're even going to experience a retrograde here during this energy. So it's something where you're going to get practical ideas, and then you're going to want to act on them. And then there's going to be frustration when it doesn't happen as quickly as you want it to. We're also going to experience Chiron going retrograde at the end of the month. This is going to bring in some of those wounds, have us taking an opportunity to look at them in another way, but also to get in touch and do non-traditional healing, particularly with the amount of planets in Leo and inner child work.
I feel like that's a lot of like that inner child. I really think now that you're saying that, something that I'm just feeling in my energy is that I think inner child is going to be highlighted. I was just telling Emily earlier that since we recorded the other day, I felt a lot of inner child healing coming up. And I was thinking about the fact that Cancer season is like the home and like the foundations. And then Leo is connected to that like fun spark of inner child. So the fact that I feel like there is like an opportunity in this window of like this year, especially, I don't know why it feels really heightened that like that transition from Cancer to Leo is like getting the support and then feeling confident to go out and do the thing. You may have to do that for yourself as a reparenting thing, but I think that's why the solar plexus was so heightened in July for me. That could be part of it, is that idea that like normally you would get the encouragement at home and then go out and do the thing if you're a kid. But if you didn't get that, then some of those wounds may be coming up. And that might be part of what you have in the stillness and then getting that spark to move forward. So for August, I actually pulled a water card. So coming from fire back into water, we have the 8 of Cups. So this is a card that the word came up, release, around this. So I do feel like, of course, with an 8, it's going to have some abundance. It's going to have some karma attached to it. It's an 8-year this year. So I feel like this will be particularly powerful. But the 8 of Cups is traditionally a card of walking away, and specifically choosing yourself and walking away is usually how I see this. And what's really interesting is the image in this particular deck is a woman who is walking away, but she's walking away from the water where she has her cups behind her, and one of them is in the water and it's got something burning in it. So that transition from the fire into water feels very strong with this energy. And it feels like we're burning old stories and we're burning old ideas. And the other piece with this is that it almost felt like what I was being shown, which I'm glad I made a note of this from last time. But what I was being shown is that sometimes the spark from something new is what finally gives you that confidence to burn the old. And so that spark that you get in that moment, whatever that insight comes in, those sacred insights, if you use that to light something and let it go, I think that can be a really powerful energy. Sometimes we don't move forward because we have nothing to look forward to yet. we don't know what we're going to choose. So the comfort is like to not have nothing. It's like we want to know what the next thing is going to be before we release something old. But the other piece of this, though, is that because it's a water card, it also, I often feel a lot of these water cards hold grief with them, like grief, but also this one has some empowerment because it's not like the Three of Swords or something where there's like heartbreak and it's very painful. This is more that grief of like, I know I'm choosing something good for myself, but it still hurts to leave something else behind. So there's an empowerment to it because you're still choosing to move forward. You're choosing something new, something that's going to benefit you. But we're heading into fall with this energy with some reflection and like taking inventory of what we do have left and what we are moving forward with. And so, yes, we may be burning one cup and letting it go, but we still have all these other things that we can look forward to. Um, and this particularly, like I had mentioned, I do really feel like this fall, this energy of like, because August is when we start to see the summer fading away, we start to see the fall coming. There is an automatic grief that I feel in August of like what I didn't do, what I didn't do enough of. And oddly enough, since we recorded last, there's been a conversation I came across on Threads. I've been hanging out there a little bit more than other social media. And someone was specifically talking about how their seasonal affective disorder, how people get that in the winter, they feel like they get those symptoms in the summer and it's just they don't know how to place it. And I actually really resonate with that. Almost all of my really depression fueled poetry and art and stuff that I create is usually in the summer. I'm usually feeling pretty optimistic in the winter and I usually keep looking forward in the winter. And I think there's that energy of like, Emily is nodding as well. And so I think this idea of gaining light, when you think about it, when we were in gaining light, we were in the winter and the spring moving into summer. And we're inviting shadow in this second half. And so I do feel like that invitation to shadow is like, you don't have to just follow along with like, oh, it's sunny out. I need to be bright. And that's where I think this goes back to July a bit too. That feeling of, yes, where there's still some stillness. Like, even though July is like, there's a lot of celebrations happening, there's holidays, there's all these things, but you may still feel that need to be a little bit inside yourself. And the fact that we have a Eight of Cups in August, it's kind of continuing that water theme, even though it's a season of fire. I just feel like there's going to be more water energy kind of like playing around there for longer.
I really find that fascinating. And I think what's going to be prevalent through this exchange from Cancer and Leo season is the two Capricorn full moons in some way, because again, this is a revisitation to what you set intentions for in January, whether you call them resolutions or mantras or what you're writing in for the year. This is that halfway point. This is when we're checking in and saying, is it working? Am I going to continue fighting this fight or am I adjusting? Am I pivoting and inviting something new in? Is it no longer in alignment with what I want? How do I feel about that? So there is a layer of grief that I think automatically comes in this August sort of window. On August 4th, we have Venus following Mercury. It's going to enter Virgo at this point. Now, Venus in Virgo is very practical. This is saying, if I'm going to feel these emotions, they need to serve a purpose. Am I actually releasing something or am I just having a fit that I need to move through? So being aware of how you are resonating with your emotions during August will be really important because they may be coming to the surface, but you may be unwilling to really sink into and feel them in the way that they need to be. Mercury then is also stationing retrograde on the 6th. At this point, it is in the very early stages of Virgo, so it will back out of those early degrees and then nearly all the way through Leo. What's interesting about a Mercury retrograde in Leo is that it makes for kind of fragile egos, for lack of a better word. It's this idea of, do I trust who and what I am, but also everyone else is feeling that same second guessing. So you can say things out of turn that get taken inappropriately, or you can mix up how you're feeling about the way someone said something to you. Be aware of those conditions between one another. Also, this is a really important window to back up your data. Virgo also rules your day-to-day tasks and bill paying and those sorts of things. So something to be aware of. We then have Mercury re-entering Leo on the 16th. The sun will enter Virgo on August 23rd. This is when we get those back to school feeling naturally. I always say it's the time of year where I'm like, oh my God, I need new pencils. I need a new Trapper Keeper. I want to reorganize my file folders. You crave the simplicity. You're like, I cannot eat another watermelon. I want to get back into meal planning. All of these things come into our awareness. Mercury will then station direct in Leo on the 29th, where it will have to transition back out and continue across Virgo. So we'll have some shadow area there. Remember that when you're second guessing the things that lit you up and the creativity, are you doing it from a place of not believing in yourself, or are you doing it because of practical or what you view as practical reasons? Don't douse your own flames. That's what comes to mind for me. And then Venus enters Libra on the 30th.
I do feel like what you were just describing really speaks to, like, don't douse your own flames. We were just talking about how it's water and fire this whole year, and like that is that back and forth. It's like as soon as you get the candle lit, then someone comes around and just puts it out, you know. And I think that as long as you're aware that that's a pattern, you can just have another one handy. You know, you can light your own flame back up again. I think that's that confidence and that solar plexus piece.
What's interesting too, and I want to bring up on a global aspect, is we've got Jupiter at this point in Gemini fueling the flames. And then we're having this whole moment of, do I second guess what I'm experiencing or what I'm thinking? What are others second guessing and experiencing? I really feel like this time period, especially here in the States, is going to be a point where we're flip-flopping on viewpoints. We're hearing things that contradict. It's going to be kind of an emotionally tumultuous time, just because on a global level, we're dealing with these aspects of what we also experienced in the eclipses: war and peace, truth and lies. Who do we align with? Who do we choose not to? And all of that also speaks to those emotional undercurrents that we're dealing with in some way.
That makes a lot of sense. That energy of like information and argument and conversation and back and forth. I definitely do feel like that also will be a thing. Like the emotions and the fire collectively will be felt as well. So I do appreciate having that lens on it. And I think that release too, that idea of the Eight of Cups, what just came to me now is that unfortunately it may be ending certain friendships or certain relationships and needing to walk away because of hearing people's beliefs, or not being able to come to an agreement or find the compromise with people, and needing to choose for your own mental health sometimes to move forward in a different way. So perhaps that's why that came up right now, Emily, is the fact that could be what you're walking away from with this Eight of Cups, is that maybe you've given multiple chances to someone or something, and this is just that point where you're like, no, this is the point where I walk away.
And the flip side of that is we look at children who can live next door to each other in completely different households, but they get together and play, and it doesn't matter. And so where have we drawn lines that were maybe too firm, that we need to re-examine and say, you know what, you don't believe the same thing I do. We may not vote the same way. We may have these disagreements, but you're still human. I still enjoy your company. Where do we redraw some of those boundaries?
Absolutely. And I think too, like, a topic, I think it was like, I don't know, we've recorded so much, seems like in the last week, but I remember, I think it was for Gemini season when I was talking about the idea of a potluck and coming together and pizza toppings and picking pizza toppings. And one of the classic things that comes up is when people say, like, there's a difference between having a difference of a belief, or, not compromising when it comes to human rights or certain things. Like, you can have different beliefs about pizza toppings, but not human rights. And I think that's where sometimes we lean into the pizza toppings a little too much, where it's like, you don't believe in the same day-to-day things. But I think that's where, both sides, what Emily was saying, I'm glad she brought up that point. Like, sometimes we can get so triggered by one thing that someone says that everything they say, you just want to like go against, or, there's sometimes we push too hard. That actually leads really well into what we have for Libra season, because I pulled the Temperance card, which is all about balance. So the fact that this is coming up in Libra season, it also has a bit of a Virgo energy to it. So this is September. It's not just Libra season, but the fact that September has kind of both these energies with this card is interesting, because the one is like, I see that it's a 14, but for me, I see it splitting. And it's like, there's the one, there's the idea of needing to have some leadership and trying something new, maybe having a new perspective that's come through with a lot of this energy. But the four is also the foundation and the stability. And so, in order to have that stability, sometimes you have to be the leader. You have to be the one to set the tone. Because if you just let yourself get ridden away with this wave of what Emily's describing, of how there's going to be a lot of things happening in the collective, it's going to cause you to make yourself smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I think that if we all do that, it's not going to help. It's not going to move anything forward. But I think, because what I really feel with this is that the one and the five are coming, the four together are coming together to make a five. This is actually having a five feeling to it, this energy of change and freedom. And I think that's what we're going to feel with this, like the feeling of being balanced, because you've done all this work to release and you've had that time of stillness, that confidence you're building up through that fire energy. You're going to feel more confident to put yourself in a leadership role if you're taking care of yourself, if you are finding the balance in your mind, body, spirit, if you're creating those routines and things for yourself, then you will have the energy and you will have the confidence to keep showing up in the way that you want to. And this isn't that all of us are going to be putting ourselves out there on the world stage. We're not all putting ourselves out there publicly so much, but it's when you have these interactions with people, being able to have that confidence to know what you believe, to know who you are. Like that idea of finding the new version of yourself that we had that was coming up through like July and August, that's going to be preparing us for this period where this is when it's going to get really, I think September feels like the turning point, where it's like, it's the crucial moment. So that is what's going to be needed. There's going to be some people that need to feel totally balanced, because the people that have been in that fire energy constantly, they're going to be almost close to burning out. So there needs to be someone that comes in with, as like the voice of reason and with compassion. And that's where I think like getting your own new routines together and getting yourself set up for success here at the beginning of September moving in is going to actually make it so that when it's your turn and you hear, sometimes you hear a conversation, you're like, this is the thing this is the hill I'm going to die on, that sort of energy, but coming with a really balanced perspective because you've had the time to really internalize and integrate things. And then what Emily was talking about, what we've been talking about from like August and September, this idea of like the new school year and finding what is essential, the idea of that, continuing that release a little bit and coming into this season knowing like what's not necessary. Like what do you put on the calendar every month that you dread doing? Or like what do you make your kids do as like a morning routine that doesn't benefit them or you? It just adds extra work. It's looking at where you can cut the energy so that you have more energy moving forward. The word that came up with this card was balance, which makes sense because, Libra season is towards the end of this month, but it's trying to find that early so that you're not like, the energy that's coming up is like trying to cram to relax. Let me cram in all of the relaxation, and then it's stressful. And then it's like, why are we doing this if it's just causing more stress? So allowing yourself to really lean into it. And this feels like the point where we're really inviting the shadow in. It feels like the point where we're like, okay, we're in that energy now. And so when the outer world looks like it's getting really dark, this could be also not just in your own conversations. It's like out there in the world, there's going to be a lot of conversation. It can feel really dark, but this is your opportunity to start feeling like you can still see the light and still trying to bring that perspective in to balance that out. So it may be in your one-to-one interactions, but it could also be you being more public about things that you feel strongly about too, and having that leadership energy that is continuing from the eclipse season. This feels like because of that Libra Aries axis, it's like whatever you really gained, whatever you really integrated and learned about yourself and learned about your boundaries and your strengths, that's what's going to really show up here by the end of the month.
That idea of cramming in relaxation feels very, very on point. We actually kicked off September right away on the 1st with Uranus going retrograde, and it's going to be retrograde until January 30th. So this is part of what we're going to experience through the entire rest of the year. Now, with Uranus in Taurus, it's very money-minded Taurus. So this is where we start to feel the slowdown in progress. You might almost experience like a forced time out that then adds to this level or layer of frustration. And if it feels like you're living in like this bottleneck of energy, like something's got to give, just remember that sometimes we're invited into these moments of tenderness and slowness for a reason, and to not fight against it. I just see that it's going to be this moment where like I was making progress. I had things planned, and this goes against everything I had planned. And so instead to use it as a temporary timeout to literally have a nap, take that time. We also, the very same day, September 1st through October 11th, begin the Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. We're finishing Pluto's experience in Capricorn. We've been talking about this for, it feels like 2 years, as we're finally winding down some of this energy. This will be its last small hurrah of about 6 weeks. What's interesting, this is really driving us to take that final big inspection of not only our finances, but we're getting close to the election. So we're calling in the questions of leadership. And we've experienced so much already upheaval around the Me Too movement. Harry Weinstein, is he in jail? Is he out of jail? Do we forgive him? Do we not forgive him? We're coming out of Summer Olympics where we've had multiple relationships and issues with, I don't even want to say his name, Nasser, sorry. And all of the victims and women that have experienced this trauma. And that's not all to say that that was Capricorn, but Capricorn and Pluto have forced us to look at the things that we have gotten used to, the structures and the things that we just took for granted. And now we're like, no, we actually have to readjust these consistently. I think this even falls under road construction. How many bridges and things have had issues as these last few hurrahs of Capricorn energy come up? It's like we've come to a point where we rely on our infrastructure without actually giving it the nurturing and nourishment that it needed. And now we're facing some of those problems, and we're having to solve them in new ways. The next thing we're going to experience, we have Mars entering Cancer on the 5th. So here we have our action and motivation, kind of taking a deep dive into Cancer. This is going to bring up that watery level of emotions. You will be motivated by what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And like the moon, that can change really, really quickly. We then have Mercury entering Virgo on the 10th. This will help to give you a little bit of grounding and more structure to your mind. But keep in mind, your mindset might not equal what your motivation or where your heart is at that moment. All of this leads up to the partial lunar eclipse in Pisces on the 18th. Now, this is the other half of the eclipses we experienced in March and April of this year. This is also a super moon, which means it's closer to Earth than normal. That can add a little bit of extra punch. And this full moon squares Jupiter and conjuncts Neptune. This is, in a lot of fanciest astrological jargon, it basically means that you were trying to look at things from multiple angles, right? Neptune has got us looking at different identities, different faiths, different ideologies, all of these things. Jupiter conjuncting that is giving it expansion or encouraging it. Yes, please, more. So really kind of hold a vision for peace during this time frame. This is an opportunity for you to also find peace in your life. The things you've been chasing and striving for may actually be undermining what you need to feel safe and secure in some way. The sun will enter Libra on the 23rd. This is fall equinox, that opportunity where we really resonate and look at what has worked and hasn't worked through the year, but also in our relationships. Have we given? Have we taken more than we've given? Have we given more than we've taken? Where is your cup full? Where is your cup empty? And recognizing that we're winding down the year and that can be a permission slip to slow down in some way. Venus will enter Scorpio on the 24th. Venus in Scorpio goes 100 miles an hour deep fast. There's no time for small talk. It's all about, I want to know your deepest, darkest secret, and that will bond us. So don't be surprised if suddenly you find yourself wanting to connect with someone over more than just coffee. Mercury will then enter Libra on the 27th. Mercury in Libra can overthink. This is an opportunity at this time of the year where we decide maybe I need to take everyone's opinion into account before my own, and also riding this axis of the eclipses that are self and other, my beliefs versus the benefit or the good of the whole. Where do you fall on that? There is no perfect answer. We don't all find the middle point instantly. We're always riding this balance beam between which is better, the seesaw between the all or me, and finding where you fit on that is important.
That actually really resonates with what I was feeling around the temperance. Like as soon as stopped recording and Emily started talking, I was like, you know what? The other feeling I'm getting around this is the doing too much, overindulging or depriving. The word deprivation came up where it's like sometimes we go so far in the opposite direction. And that can be even in relationships of like if I'm over giving and I'm not getting anything back, or if I'm not sharing my own opinion, or if I'm taking in everyone's opinion except my own, there is the need where like sometimes it goes too far and like those scales tip to the point where one is just crashing down and the other one's flinging you out from the other side. If you're on the other side, it feels more like a catapult than a scale. So that really resonates. And I think that's why when we come into October, we have the Hermit, which is number 9. It's at the end of a cycle. We went from an 8, then we went into this Temperance, and now we're coming into a 9. So this feels like we're still riding similar energies. It's just that we're at a different point. And so we come into a point here where the Hermit also has some Virgo energy to it, but this was the point, I think, in our last recording, Emily, where the energy really started building, which makes sense because this is the closer we're getting to elections. You know, this is also when the veil is getting thinner. And it really feels like this is the point where spirit, even when I was sitting and making notes, I sit down with the cards. I don't look at anything. I don't look at any forecast stuff. I don't look at astrology. Don't even look at the guidebooks, nothing. I just sit with the energy and make some notes. And this was the point where I could feel spirit getting really close and really serious. It was like we went from like, okay, we're moving through it, whatever. And when it came to this Hermit energy, it was very much like I felt like spirit was behind me, which is usually what happens when I feel like spirit is pushing us forward. It's like you can't turn around because they're like, nope, turn your ass around. You're moving forward. And that happens a lot in readings when I know spirit is trying to tell someone that they have the support to do what they need to do. And that was what I felt around this. And the word that came up for this was journey. And so this was the point where I started getting full tingles. And even when I look at my notes now, I can feel myself in that energy. And the first thing I wrote down, this is where I felt like I told Emily, I think from this point on, I was channeling when I was writing because I remembered a lot of the notes from the point before this. But when we come into this October energy, the first thing I wrote down was into the dark, light from within. And that already, I'm just getting chills again. So this is definitely where spirit is putting their energy. And it's letting us have that inner child work, all of that other stuff we need to do earlier in those first few months, because this is where we really need to do our work, whatever our work is to benefit the collective. If it's being a parent and helping your children through stuff, if it's having conversations with people that need to hear things, this is the point where your light needs to start showing up because we're now, we're in the shadow, right? We're inviting shadow and it's getting darker. And this is where our light needs to grow. And the image in this card, part of what resonated when I looked back at the card was that it's a person sitting high up on a mountain, but they have a little lamp with them. There's light coming from their heart out. And that's the point where I think we're at, where it's like we may need to take some reprieve for ourselves, but the energy behind us was that the spirit's not going to let us go all the way into the hermit mode where we take ourselves out of society. And that was why I think that Libra temperance card was also telling us, like, yes, you're gearing up for something. You're coming into balance so you can move forward. You're finding these new routines and things so that you don't have to think about them and all of your energy can go into whatever's coming. And this is the point where I got like a full visual that's coming back to me now when I look down at my next note. This was serious. Like, there's no fluff in these months. This is where it got into, like, every note I wrote down was very intentional. And the next one was where I feel we all need to sort of really, like, the reason I'm dragging this out is spirit's showing me that, like, we all need to, like, calm our energy and actually listen. Because what they were showing me is that normally, if you're going on a journey, we go out and we go walking. And if you live in a set city or a town, you follow the streetlights. You walk where the government and the institutions and the city has put the lights. That's where it tells you where to walk. But what they were showing me was the lights are out now. We can't trust that. That Pluto and Capricorn is leaving. We are burning down the system. And now we as people have to be louder about what we actually want. And like this journey we've been on, like the word journey, it's like we've all been on this together, whether we like it or not. We're all on the same journey, whether we agree or not. We're trying to decide a collective future here. And not everyone is going to be 100% satisfied. And so this energy is that now all of a sudden there's no street lights. We're all walking and somebody has to be the light. So it's showing that instead of the street lights that we're holding flashlights now. And if we're all going to go in the same direction, we all need to be walking together with these flashlights. And the more flashlights come together, the clearer that path ahead is going to be. But if we are all choosing not to walk together and we're all just randomly out in a field, it's not going to do anything. If other people are trying to find where they should be going, they're not going to have any clear idea of a path forward. And if we all choose to die on our own individual hills, like that hermit up on the mountain, then someone else is going to make those decisions for you. And it's going to be the people that are happiest. This is where I think, Emily, where we got really more into being very clear. Like, we don't usually get into politics. We don't usually get into the thick of it, but I feel it I feel myself getting filled with like this rage that I didn't have 2 minutes ago, literally. And what it's showing me is how I felt when we got conservative leadership again here, where I was like, we already knew how bad it was. And we had the lowest voter turnout in a long time. And I was filled with rage then, the way that I'm feeling it now. And this didn't come up last time. So I feel like this is why we're revisiting this, because what it's showing me is that the only people that will reliably show up for an election are the people that are happy and don't want to lose what's happening. So if the people who are already winning, they're not going to give up their lead. Those are the people leading by like they're like, I don't want anything to change. I want things to stay the way they are or to get worse, basically, for everyone else, because I want my money, I want my freedom. And I'm doing the air quotes because that word is thrown around so much now. But this idea that like anybody who's extremely happy with how things are now and the direction things are going, they're going to show up. So if you're not, then you need to show up. And that's where having the flashlight, like we don't have the resources to be lighting the streetlights ourselves at this point. We don't have the infrastructure. This is so interesting that this came up this time because you were just talking about infrastructure. And what they're showing me is that as individual people, like we can't build new infrastructure on our own. And so what they're showing me is I did an episode a while ago about desire paths and how in architecture, often what they'll do is they won't put in sidewalks or anything first. They'll let people take their natural pathways of where they want to go. And then they pave that road. And that's what they're showing me right now is what we all need to do is ignore wherever the actual sidewalks are, ignore the existing infrastructure. And we all need to just start walking in the dirt. That's why they keep showing me the path. That's what they kept showing me a field. And I was like, why are we out in a field? But it makes sense because that's what they're showing me is like, we have to go where there already is no path. And we have to keep showing that that's what we all want. And if we all keep walking that path, it's going to be a trench. And then we're in the trenches and we're just in it. So what they're showing me is that like, this is the time where we need to control what we're seeing. So you may need to drown out a lot of, like, that's where the hermit mode comes in. It's not that you're retreating and going off on your own, but it's that the hermit mode is in not letting all of the other loud voices that are annoying you to exhaust you and take away your momentum. This is where you need to dig in and just find your people and really move forward. And I think too, like, part of this is the next thing that I have in quotes is the call is coming from inside the house. And that was the point where I was like, okay, this is also a pivotal energy. We're getting the chills coming back. We're in the energy again. October is the energy, people. I'm telling you, this is where the energy really picked up, because the idea is that we always point fingers externally and say, like, it's other people's problem. Other people aren't doing the thing. And, the government isn't doing this, but it's all of us. That inner light that they're talking about, that like into the dark light from within, is that the dark is what we're in. We're in the dark now. We're all in this dark time. And so if people are happy, then that should be the red flag at this point. If people are feeling like this is great, we should just do more of this. That's where the light needs to come in. And it's not in a harsh way. And I think that's the thing, is we assume that if we are saying something is wrong or that we don't agree with it, we think that we're yelling at everyone. But the truth is, sometimes people just need that's why it's a flashlight. You're just shining light on something that other people maybe can't see. And it's not that you're telling everyone, yelling at everyone and scolding people like children. That's not what we're doing. We're just pointing and saying, you didn't see this yet, though. Like, yes, maybe this view here looks good, but did you see what's happening over here because this is happening? And so it's just these small things that are, again, if each of us is holding the flashlight and we're each doing our very best in whatever comes our way, we don't have to seek it out. And if you are someone who's a leader and wants to put yourself out there, that's incredible. Please do. But if it's just whatever comes to you, if you're just able to deal with those one-on-one interactions and take the opportunities when you might normally shy away, just say something, that has a huge impact. And that voter turnout thing is being shown in my head again. Like, they're showing me that, like, even if it's just telling other people to vote, that idea that, like, you can be so confident seeing on social media the face everyone's putting on of like, we need change, and then no one shows up. That was what enraged me so much, was that I saw so many people who I was like, this is great. I feel momentum. Like, outwardly, that's where that outward energy, that call is coming from inside the house. You can't be on social media being like, oh, look, this is what I believe. And like, we're all doing this. But then if you're not doing it, if you're not showing up to vote, you're not showing up in those places where it matters, what are you going to get out of it? Like, how is that change going to happen? So this is the longest rant I think I've gone on in a while, but it was just showing the ending of this going into November is just showing that, like, because the veil is thinner, if you're really not sure and you're like, I am so scared, I know I need to do something, I don't know what to do. What they're showing me is that feeling that I'm getting of like spirit being behind you is like, ask spirit. Oh my God, I'm getting like chills. That this is the point where the veil is so thin that's why this point is so pivotal, because at the same time that it's urgent that everyone goes and does these things, spirit is the most present and the most tangible to us. So why don't we use those two things together and say, okay, I'm going to be brave, but you need to tell me what to do. You need to put me in front of the right people, bring the right opportunities to me, have the conversations come to me, and I will show up. It's like a declaration to spirit. I'm holding the flashlight and I'm going to take moments to myself. I'm going to need that hermit energy here and there to recharge, but I'm going to keep showing up. What they're showing me is the recharge is recharging the batteries for the flashlight. It's like you have to go home and recharge, and we do it in shift. That's what they're showing me. It's like there's waves and shifts. So spirit will bring things to you when it's your turn. But in between, you need to be still conscious and still aware of like where your energy is going.
Well, that's a hard act to follow, but I will say that we are definitely back in the energy, because I too had several moments of full body chills while you were talking. And I had even noticed in my notes, I wrote down the call is coming from within the house, and I didn't recognize where that came from or why. So I feel like that is an incredible, just a piece to actually keep and remember as a mantra as you're moving through this. A few other pieces that came up during that was the thing about Libra, and I love Libra. This is absolutely no shade is being thrown if you are a Libra and listening. But collectively, when we experience Libra energy, it can lead to indecision because we literally see all options. And where that can be a detriment and why it's so important that we literally have this Libra new moon annual or solar eclipse on October 2nd, to me, it's like this beacon that says, yes, we can have all of these options, but you literally have to pick one. If you don't stand for something, you fall for nothing, right? This is the energy that comes in. And I loved that you were talking about that we're going to do this in waves. And we're asking, maybe someone stands up and is the leader for a moment, and then someone takes it and continues. Will it be done by just one person? No. But we have to look at the greater good, at the entire overall arching theme. Another piece that's coming in so strongly for this year, we've got Pluto zipping back and forth between Aquarius. This is an awareness and an opening of AI, not only news, but imagery and all of these things that we've grown to trust. Jupiter is expanding how much information we're taking in, how much is out there, the prevalence of what's real and not real. And then we've just experienced this Mercury retrograde in Virgo that's asking you to get really crystal clear and to double check what you believe and don't believe, what's real, what's not real. All of those things are coming to a head at this point in October. And this eclipse, yes, while it may highlight and be part of your personal evolution from what you experienced in the first half of 2024, I think it will be a definite collective experience in October when we're really like, what is real, what's not real, what do I stand for? We also have Jupiter then going retrograde on the 9th. Now, it's going to stay retrograde until February of next year. This means that communication may start to slow down. Maybe there will start to be some barriers, not only that you self-impose as you're embracing this hermit. What am I willing to take in and not take in? But also, are you going to change how you interact with people? Are you changing how you're doing business? Everything kind of comes under this re-examination light at this point. On October 11th, we have Pluto finally going direct again in Capricorn. So it will be moving through those absolute final degrees. This is where we're burning down the infrastructure. We're taking what works, leaving behind what doesn't. On October 13th, Mercury moves into Scorpio. Mercury in Scorpio is going to find the truth. It is going to seek it out. It doesn't matter where it is or where it's living or who's got it. It's curious and it's going to find it. This will help us to start to find some hope, to find something to unite behind, and maybe stories, things that we've been told will start to come to light. On October 17th, we have an Aries full supermoon. Again, this is the balance between war and peace, self and others. Is someone standing up that we don't believe in? Is it ourselves that we need to believe in? This is also the 5th and final supermoon of 2024. So we've had 5 of these moons really close, amplifying our emotions and just the extremes that have shown up in nearly all of the eclipses. Make sure that you are defining you and yourself. This is really kind of a pivotal moment because the full moon is going to be squaring with both Mars and Pluto. And so this is an amplification of rivalries. Who are you standing behind? Who are you not? Venus will enter Sagittarius on the 17th. Venus in Sagittarius gets curious. And it too wants to seek the truth, but it's going to do it through knowledge of who is doing something different than I am that's working, and how can I use that in betterment of myself somehow? How can I adjust my belief structures? This will give us an opportunity to possibly see things in new ways. And then the sun will enter Scorpio on the 23rd. The sun dipping into Scorpio, again, this is that time of the veil is thin. You may feel tired. You may feel like hermiting. How can you sustain the energy and continue to move forward in a way that allows you to I want to say stay cautiously optimistic from two grounded earth signs.
Our tagline. So that, as you were describing it, all of that astrology really feels potent, and exactly why I think the switch that we made with this one, with you doing more of your own interpretations and like you didn't have as much prepared, I feel like that is why Spirit is like, no, you guys, Spirit's behind both of us right now, being like, you share what comes to mind. Because I think too, going into November here, we have an 8 of Wands. It's 8 again, and we're back in fire energy. And this feels like, because we're in an 8 year, we're getting close to the end of the year. And the idea of the 8 is that where it's karma, there's a lot of things wrapping up. We're wrapping up cycles, and 9 is right before we go back into a new cycle. And the 8 and the 9 hold a lot of energy in numerology, because the 9, especially like next year, I'm fascinated to see what happens next year, because 9 also holds a little bit of 1, because we don't use 0. For me, 0 is always a placeholder. Like the 0 is the fool in tarot. It's taking the first leap. It's starting the new journey. And the fact that, we had the hermit and the word journey with it before this 8 energy is like setting you up for that. It's setting up already, even though we still have 9 coming. It's like when you come to 8, that karma is like you're already kind of deciding what that next step is going to be. And then 9 is just making the turnover. So we really do need to wrap a lot up this year. And the fact that the word that came up was just fast, I was like, that's frightening, because, usually these seem to be leading to a bigger theme. But I was like, this feels a little scary when I first wrote that down. And it was before I felt into the actual month itself. I wrote it down as I pulled the cards. And what I'm seeing now, this time around recording, um, what I'm feeling into it is that what I'm being shown is that Emily and I recorded that one before, because it was helping us to integrate some of these ideas before we shared, so that other insights can come through and to have more clarity. What they're showing me is that we went through our own journey of these energies. And what they're showing me now is this fast energy. They're showing me the lighting a fuse. It's like, that's what's going to happen. It's not a fast of like us running. It's like, we're not going to be able to catch up. So whatever you do, whatever you're lighting, make sure it's something that you want to move forward with. Like, they're really trying to give us this energy of like, we're in a lot of fire. We're going into Sagittarius season, but it feels like we're just in it already. There's already a lot of this energy with the election, and with a lot of we don't even know. Again, this happened last time. We're assuming what it might be, but we don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. We don't know what's going to be happening along with all of this in November. But we're coming out of this hermit mode, and we didn't really get a full break in this hermit mode, but we're now open to connect again. Like, we're really like, we're connecting the dots. We have the knowledge, right? That wisdom, the word wisdom is coming up. It's a spoiler. The word wisdom is December, but it's partly because we have this Sagittarius energy of the teacher. The 9th house is also being highlighted here for me, of this like wisdom, this like spiritual energy. And the idea that you're going to have to just go with it. You're not going to have time to sit and hermit and ponder and then come back and share your wisdom. That is not going to happen. And when you're really in the fire, when you're feeling lit up about something, you don't always think it through and say things properly. So you have to be really prepared and know what your talking points are. They're showing me the elevator pitch, and it's like, you're not going to be going in like we're not doing door to door. But what they are showing me is that it is actually getting to that point. This is really interesting. They're showing me a lot right now. So they're showing me that, like, what Emily was saying about the AI and how like elections are going to be questioned, and there's all those things that come into play, and all the imagery that they're able to create, where it's like, oh my God, it looks like this person, this thing happened in a war, but people are like, I'm here, and that didn't happen. And that is why they were showing me in this hermit mode back in October. We're not looking at all of that to make our decisions. We are going within, and we're talking to other people, and we're doing that kind of thing. And the fact that TikTok is such a hot button issue in the States, it's because the whole time, like Ukraine and going into Palestine, all this stuff, people who are on the ground there are being like, this is what's actually happening. And that has been distributed so quickly that that's where that fast, like that fuse energy is coming in right now. So we really need to also recognize that what might be needed is the people who are physically around you is who you might be impacting more. Maybe the internet is not going to be reliable by then. There's going to be a lot of shifting happening, like that age of Aquarius, that like technology thing. There are going to be shifts happening. Maybe there's going to be a whole new app. I don't know. But what I can say is that they are showing me door to door sales, but you might need to do that. There are people that go door to door reminding people to vote. And it may be that you need to be in your physical community having conversations. If there's a town hall meeting, if there's a way to email, I actually sent an email. I'm not usually someone who remembers. It's usually I have the intention to do things, I don't follow through. But there was a call to action to fight for some arts funding in our city. And we promote ourselves as an art city. And when you look at the funding that happens, it's not matching up and it's not sustainable. And so there may be a lot of these things where you can't physically go to a meeting, but you can send an email. So what they're showing me is it is boots on the ground. It is like we're going to be in more in your face to face interaction. We forgot that that was even a thing because we've been so chronically online for the last 4 years. But we're going back to a point where we're going to need to have meetings in person and we're going to need to have community groups that we get up to be a part of. And what I'm getting chills already because I just remembered the main point from this that came up last time that I have written down here. But before I do, I just want to say like the less resistance you have, the better because things are going to happen fast. And if you try to slow them down, you're either going to have your own point missed or you're going to miss your chance to make your point, is what they're showing me. Like, yes, sure, you'll still be doing what you need to do, but you need to be able to be quick in the moment when you're seeing people face to face and you're having the opportunities to say the things that need to be said. Because at this point, what they're showing me is like, if you're trying to preserve someone's ego or you're trying to preserve a relationship that's like an acquaintance, when like you could give a spark to that person and give them something to think about, that's not benefiting anyone if you just say, and then walk away. We're not at that point anymore. We're not preserving the friend of a friend of a friend because we don't want to rock the boat. We're lighting the fuse. We're doing it now and we're seeing what happens and we're taking chances. And the thing that really, oh God, I'm getting like choked up just thinking about it. The thing that we had last time was what they were showing me is that we are all taking our matches and lighting one candle. We are all coming. I'm getting full chills. I knew this was going to happen because this still happened last time. So what they were showing me is like they were showing me a vigil. That's the word that came up that got us fully body chills the first time. This is the in person, right? You can't light a candle with someone from afar. Maybe not all of us will be doing this, but we need to be more involved in things that we can be involved in. So even if it's just your own family, but what they were showing me is that like when there's a vigil for someone, people physically show up and they all take their candles or their matches or whatever, and they stand together. And that goes back to the flashlight. Like we're holding on to that. That's not going away. From October to November, we're holding our lights, but it's just instead of a flashlight showing the way, it's like now we're lighting it. Like now we got the fire now. Now we know where we're all going. We all made our decision. We are clear on it. And that Scorpio energy is like, we know the truth now. We're not letting it go. And so this idea that like we can all come together for one collective future and we can all bring our candles and like we can all bring our matches and we can all light one big bonfire. And then that can't be ignored. Maybe individual matches and candles and lighters, holding those up. But if you've ever been in a concert and you see the energy when everyone's holding their light, it becomes one light. And that's what they're showing me is like, we're letting it, we're on the ground and it might be a trash can, but we're going to be lighting fires. Like people are going to see us and we're not going to be ignored, but it takes multiple people doing that. And they're showing me this energy of like people, there are already, I'm not going to say that there aren't, like there's already people that are out that are protesting, that are stepping forward. But it's just going to be, I feel like this is going to come in really creative ways because the more they try to suppress things online, the more we're just going to go in person. It's like, okay, if you don't want to listen to us when we're quietly in our own homes, then we'll just go downtown and we'll all be there. And then you can not ignore us when we're a physical body. And I think that's the point a lot of people are getting to. And if you're not someone who can do that, that's when you still talk to spirit and you just say, okay, show me how I can make a difference. Maybe for me, maybe I'll be making prints and distributing them, or maybe I'll just be sharing it. This was the other piece that they're showing me is like that energy of like Jupiter and Gemini. The way we can use that is if you don't know what to say, this came up last time, you just share voices of people who you agree with then. If you don't know how to put it in your own words and you don't feel like you're the person who should be highlighted, like I am a cis white woman. I don't need to have my voice in something about issues for other people, but I can share what other people are saying. I don't need to be the one at the center of attention, but I can still share all the things that I see that I resonate with, that I feel are sharing the message that I want to share. And so they're showing that like that is the equivalent of us all holding up our lighters, us all lighting the flame. It's like whatever comes to your awareness that you're like, this feels like it needs to be shared, then that's the action we need to take.
The really big pivotal moment that I think encapsulates so much of this energy that we're talking about for November is the fact that Mercury moves into Sagittarius on November 2nd, and it doesn't leave until January 8th. Mercury usually spends 3 weeks in a sign, and it's going to be here for an extended period of time. Mercury is about communication and our mindset. Sagittarius is about the things that people experience outside of our collective area. What's happening in the other community on the other side of the world, this gypsy traveler sort of energy. What I feel like we in the US, and again, I apologize for this getting so political, but it does feel so prominent through this time of the year, is that we tend to hermit in the United States. We tend to think that either A, we're fighting this alone, or B, no one else cares, or C, do we care if they care? Depends on which side you're on. And what to me this really truly feels like is an amplification of voices globally holding these flashlights. So even if, yes, it is your community and you are banding together in that way, it also feels like I am part of this candle or this illumination of flashlights from the other side of the world. The people over there care about what's happening here and about the choices that we make, and that we are moving together in a way that is going to make sustainable change. We cannot live in these small little areas and pockets where we think we don't affect each other, because that isn't our truth any longer. And especially as the voices continue to get amplified and communication gets amplified through this transit in Gemini, it's going to be so important for you to listen to and share those voices that are coming in from different sources. So to me, that is this highlight for November. Now, Mercury will go retrograde on November 27th at the end of the month. So we have sort of basically only a couple of days in Sagittarius before the election. But then afterwards, what do we do with this information? How are we sharing it? All of that is going to be really interesting. Venus will move into Capricorn on November 11th. Now, keep in mind, we're still dealing with some of those final throes of Pluto moving out of Capricorn. Venus being in Capricorn, again, wants it to do things in a very structured way. So how are we loving one another? How are we finding peace and harmony through our constant decisions, through creating a new foundation and a new framework that we can actually trust and believe in? Saturn finally goes direct in Pisces on the 15th. This is only 4 days apart. This is a feeling of, once it's direct, because it's been retrograde for quite a long time at this point, having Saturn go direct in Pisces is reminding us that we are here in a way that is bigger than ourselves. We have a responsibility to something larger than individualism. In a way, Pisces always is looking at what's bigger, what's the bigger consciousness, what's the bigger collective. The other thing Pisces rules are things in our structure and society that are hidden: hospitals, mental health, the things that we need, but we don't necessarily see or talk about. We have a Taurus full moon on the same day. That's going to help bring in some stabilization and will help amplify that Venus and Capricorn energy. On November 19th, finally, Pluto will move into Aquarius. So this is where we get that final emphasis of what we were experiencing with Venus as well. Pluto in Aquarius, having transited for the last time out of Capricorn. This is ushering us into the new era that really doesn't end until 2044. So we are kind of at the threshold of making so many major decisions. November 21st, we have the sun moving into Sagittarius. This will amplify that collective feeling. I always talk about Sagittarius being the gypsy, the traveler, the student, and the professor, because there's also a want and a need to understand and master the information in a way that it can be utilized. It's also ruled by the horse in some ancient societies, and the shaman was often ruled by the horse. How are you finding these hidden nuggets of wisdom and knowledge and integrating them and using them in your own life in a way that illuminates a distant and different future than we've experienced or expected? On November 25th, we have Mercury stationing retrograde, like I said, and then things finally start to calm down just a little bit as we head into December.
It does feel like a pivotal moment there in October, November. And I think, like Emily said, we are heading into a new era. That long, like until 2044, is a long time. And when you think about how long Capricorn has been in this energy as well, like how long we've been living out that part of it, it makes sense that there would be some really pivotal decisions happening at the end of this year, especially with it being an 8 year, that karma energy. Like we are setting ourselves up for a new cycle. And even within numerology, it's 1 to 9. So then we're going to be starting again next year. We'll be wrapping it up and we'll start to see the changes taking place. And then we'll be in fresh energy the next year. So we're not far away. We're so close to the end of the cycle either way. Any way you look at it, we can't avoid it at this point. We're too far past the middle. And it's also ushering in abundance, though. I think that's the thing. It feels scary thinking like, oh my God, there's all of this big energy, but it's for a purpose. Like we're bringing something in that's going to be more collective abundance. It's not going to be as much with the few. I do feel that the fact that, we've been talking about how finances is going to come up a lot with this energy. And I think that's why, because we're going to be making decisions that don't protect the wealthy as much and that do protect more people. And when we go into December, that energy of the teacher energy and that like knowledge energy continues because we have the Hierophant. So not only did we start with an ace again, like the first 6 months, we ended with the Hierophant in June. We're ending with it in December. And this is proving that like we are in these cycles where we're like gaining knowledge and then we're taking that and then improving on it. And because before maybe it was more of an internal beginning of the year where we were internalizing and integrating a lot of this. Now we're moving forward with it. And we are the ones with the wisdom. We've been through the cycle. We all, I think, feel like we need to know all the things before we share information. And what just came to me when Emily was talking about that energy, and I was looking down and seeing the Hierophant there, was that in human design. So if you're not familiar, it's okay. You don't need to know a lot. But I am a 5-1 in my profile. And the 5 is known as the heretic, like the person who is, everyone projects on you even when you're not doing anything. People also, you're seen as a problem solver. People come to you to solve problems and you're being seen, you're being perceived all the time, even when you don't want to be. And having a 1 in your profile is like you're the investigator. You're the one who is always needing all the information. And when you have, for me, how I always live is that I know whatever I say, people are going to hear it. And I'm sometimes hold myself back from sharing because I don't have all of the information. I'm not an expert on it, so I'm not going to say anything. But if we all do that, then the only people being heard are the people who have the confidence to be heard. And it doesn't mean they're right just because they're the loudest. And I think that energy is what we're walking away from. And that's what we're learning from that. Like being a hermit in public is like a very scary thing. Like when you're like, I know I really want to just be retreating and learning more, but I have to keep going. If we allow ourselves that to say, you can say it like, I'm not an expert, but this is how I feel about it. That's why we're going between, like, we're not in the air sign. We're not in the earth. We're not sure. We're not stable. And we don't have all the intellectual information maybe. But if you have passion and a strong feeling about something, and you know what feels right to you, you can still share that. You can say it. You can say, I don't know all the information, but from what I have gathered, the things I have tried to put myself in to learn, what I've embodied, this is how I feel. And I think that if we just come with that energy, that honesty of like, I don't have all the information. Maybe you do, but it opens a conversation. It puts us in a place where other people who aren't quite sure can say, you know what? I've been thinking the same thing. I'm glad you said it. And sometimes it just takes being the first person to be like, I'm going to get attacked for this, which is usually what the 5-1 does. Like, I'm going to get attacked by this, but the heretic is out there, the people in the corner shouting their thing. Like, if people can be out on that corner every day shouting about Jesus, you can say one thing that you truly believe in on your own Instagram page or your own social media where people know they're coming for your opinion, right? And so when we come into December, though, this wisdom, the word is wisdom here, what really hit me, and I think Emily saw me last time, I actually stared at my page for a second, like, oh, I didn't even know what I had written. And what I wrote was that there's only questions, there's no messages. Spirit will refuse to kind of tell us what to do with that information. That's where that energy of the Hierophant is. It's our, like, we have gathered this information. We've been doing this long enough. We've been in this energy. And after everything that's going to happen, which we can't at this point say what that is, but when we get through October and November and we're coming to the end of this year, looking at 2025 and what we're going to be doing for the next year or the next cycle for all of these things, the next 4 years when it comes to elections, whatever it may be, when we see what happened from this election, regardless of what side wins, what the result is, you don't just stop moving forward. It's not like it's like, oh, good, everything's fixed, or oh no, it's all over. Either way, there's only this, we're going until 2044 with this energy. So it's like we're just at the baby stages of this, and we have to keep pushing forward. You chose to be here in this lifetime at this time. So you didn't come here to take a nap, okay? You didn't come in this time period because you wanted to chill and eat berries. It's not the life we chose. I'm sorry to tell you. Maybe some of us are going to do that. Some people who have all the money and are able to just do that, they'll do that, and that's fine. But that doesn't speak for the collective. And that's why Spirit's not giving us an answer at this point. They're like, we have given you all of this information. We've given you all of these tools. We've given you ways to communicate. You have technology. You have the ability to go and talk to people. You have the ability to meet with people and to show that you care. And so the questions are going to keep coming because we're going into like deep winter. We're almost at gaining light again. We're deep in the shadow at this point, to the point where we're like, what is the last thing I need to learn? This is the last point of inner reflection before we start having more light and we start to move forward again with more hope. And I think that idea that like we had this journey with the star, the 17 with hope that started in Cancer season last year, and it kind of came up again for the eclipses this year. It's like now we're out of that. We don't have to keep, like, we have been so cautiously optimistic, as we've been saying, but now we really have to hold the optimism and say, this is happening, and choose it. We can't keep waiting for, again, the call is coming from inside the house. We've had our chance to sit with information and to process it on our own. But now we have to pick our battles. We have to be like mostly moving forward. And then again, that hermiting needs to be shorter time periods. There's going to be people that are going through this for the first time and they're going to go full hermit. So some of us have to keep going. It's a relay. It's not a sprint. We all need to keep passing the baton and moving forward, because all it takes is for 1 week for everyone to stop, and then we lose our momentum. And it's not to say that this is a doom or gloom situation, just reality. If you look at a news cycle, this is something that I am having show up for some reason, but I took a lot of environmental science courses, and it talks about climate change and how like something can be in the news and be huge, but the way the news cycle works is it's out of rotation again. That's why things get swept under the rug. If you look at what happened with Gaza, it was very hardcore for a while, and then people get burned out. And when it's out of the news cycle, you only see it if you're intentionally in those spaces. If you're not on TikTok following people that are talking about this constantly, and I have a bunch of like channels that I follow, even on Instagram, to get information. And if you're not doing that, the main news coverage is not going to show you all of that. And that's the whole idea, is that you have the wisdom at this point to know what sources you're following. That idea of media consumption that kept coming up around that, even Jupiter and Gemini, like we're going to have all these things. It's like your discernment now. You're a grown up. We're not babies at this point. What they're showing me is like, you're an adult. You can choose what you believe and then hold fast to that. Be the person who is the teacher at this point. The Hierophant the first time was letting go and like choosing what to believe. It was like, okay, like who are my teachers now? What am I believing? What beliefs am I holding on to? And this point, it's like you are the one making the choices. Now you have the wisdom. You've been gathering it from the journey that we went through in October. And it made me feel like we were just there 2 days ago at this point, which it probably will. It always does. But it's telling us to ask questions. And the questions that I have here are, as we're changing focus, what is important to you? What or who is guiding you? What is your guiding light? Have you lost your direction with everything that you've been consuming? And these are questions we need to be constantly asking ourselves. These aren't things that we ask ourselves this 1 month and we're like, good to go. This is something we're going to have to continuously do because more new information is going to keep coming to the surface. Think about how much has been suppressed over the last who knows how many years. And it takes the whistleblowers time to all be able to get their information because, as we know, if you don't come with all the facts, if you're the heretic just screaming from the rooftops, no one's going to listen. But you have to have that information to back it up. That's why I feel like for me as a 5/1, I'm like, I feel this energy so strongly because I'm like, I know what it's like to be the person to say something and have people look at you like you're nuts, even though you're like, I know, I've been doing the research. But if you don't have it to show, if you don't have the receipts are huge, in cancel culture, in everything. If you can show a screenshot, if you can show the information, then you can't ignore it. People will trust you if you have the information. And so with AI and everything, it's like keep asking yourself again. I think the most important thing is what or who is guiding you. Like, are you going from internal and like what you believe, or are you just following the group? Because again, then we're going to lose all of that momentum we had from getting together and, standing together with our flashlights.
What I find fascinating about your experience with this card and the energies and the messages coming in, we start December 1st with the Sagittarius new moon. Now, what's interesting, because we have one of those every year, is that we actually get 2 Sagittarius full moons in December. So again, this is bookending the month and also this energy just before the solstice and just after. Now, a Sagittarius new moon in general is asking you to sort of step into the options, step into taking a risk, look outside of the box, do something that's dangerous and different. But the thing about this one in particular that's interesting is that it is opposing or at odds with cautious Saturn and opposite super confident Jupiter. This is making us question where our responsibility is, where we want to just continue to push through with the status quo, right? Jupiter gets confident. Jupiter also loves Sagittarius. So to be at odds with it in some way feels almost like we're at odds with ourselves. And making sure that you find a responsible way to move through this is, again, the energy that keeps coming up over and over. Now, Venus is going to enter Aquarius on December 8th. Okay, normally that wouldn't be such a big deal either, but we've just had Pluto move here. So Venus spent its last few degrees and moments with Capricorn and Pluto, and now it's kind of chasing down Pluto in Aquarius. And so again, we're going to have this moment of what are we letting go of and what are we making room for? Venus always is asking and hoping for peace and harmony, but that comes with a price. It comes because we have to let something else go. We can't continue to hold too much. Having it meet up so early in the earliest degrees of Aquarius is going to add an amplification of that. And Aquarius wants us to think way outside the box. Really double check what we're thinking about, where our mindset is. Are we overthinking things? What are our energy systems doing? So many things can come into play with that energy. On December 6th, we have Mars going retrograde in Leo. Now, Mars only goes retrograde once every approximately 18 months. So it has been almost a year and a half since we've experienced this energy. Mars retrograde in Leo slows down our personal motivation and the feeling of where we wanted to stand out in an individual way now somehow we get moved into this laziness almost like, oh, okay, we survived it. We can drop into the status quo. I don't need to be on hypervigilance anymore. And yes, we can to an extent. And we are inviting, like we said, shadow. It is a time to witness the slowdown, but we can't put all of our flashlights down. We can't all extinguish our candles. We need to continue in some way to set up the structure and the foundation for what we're bringing in. We also have Neptune finally going direct in Pisces. This will happen on December 7th. This energy is a little bit slower moving, but for the past few months, we really had to go into this place of deep inner contemplation. And this is pulling us back out of it so that now we can move forward with new ideas and new clarity and new answers. If we stay sort of locked in that feeling of I'm tired and I've done the battle, we might miss some of these downloads, but don't feel like you have to be hyper vigilant. This energy is going to continue for several months. So this will continue to influence us over the greater scheme and even moving into next year. Mercury will finally go direct in Sagittarius on December 15th. Here again, now that we've experienced going internal and questioning ourselves and what we want, we can start to go outward again. And this happens just a few days before the winter solstice and the sun sliding into Capricorn. What's interesting that will usher in some things in the new year is that Chiron will also go direct. It has been retrograde through all of the summer and fall. It squeaks in and goes direct in Aries on December 29th. And then the very next day, we have the Capricorn new moon on the 30th. This all speaks to this feeling of like, yes, we've passed this pivotal moment, and it's an opportunity for us to continue with what has worked and what hasn't, and to set up what I feel is new boundaries, new belief systems. Sagittarius rules religion, and it rules religion in the way of we create these external information sources that make a framework for what we believe in, where we tie our morals. What do we truly believe and stand by at the end of the day? And we've had sort of a pivotal moment to re-examine that. And so moving forward, we're going to carry that energy into 2025 with a very different view of the world, I think, and a different view of what we're capable and willing to put up with on an individual level.
Yeah, I have this feeling like by the time we get to the gaining light again, when we start to switch over into that energy, the fact that July and December had these like two different moons, like we had two full moons, then two new moons. It's like the same thing that we started with an ace and then we ended with the Hierophant. We have these mirroring things where, the tarot that I pulled even is mirroring these opportunities we have to like really amplify these energies. And I think because there are these bigger shifts that are happening in Aquarius, just feels like it makes sense that like all of these themes that we have with the idea of community and looking at the collective and thinking about other people's perspective and like how what we do here affects people in other places. And I think like what Emily was saying earlier, this feels like it ties in with that, where yes, in the US and Canada included, because we're so close, but like we tend to see ourselves as a bubble, but we have a lot of power in the world, like the US especially. Everything that happens there does impact other countries. There's a lot that happens in other countries that is mostly not controlled by those countries. And I think we forget that sometimes. I think for a lot of us, it's easier to fight for someone else than it is to fight for ourselves. And so if we have that lens of like, seeing conflict other places and saying, you know what, me making this choice here is going to help those people. If that helps you to actually push forward and keep moving forward, maybe that is where you make a decision on who you're following and what you're consuming. Maybe if you consume more global content and less local content, it'll help you to make those decisions. Because I think if we get caught up in our own daily comforts, it is easier to let the news cycle move on. Whereas if you're following people who are in it and don't have a choice, it makes it a lot harder to just sit back.
traditionally, Aquarius was ruled by Saturn. That's where it gets this undying sense of responsibility. The modern ruler is, of course, Uranus, which is the planet that doesn't spin. It kind of rolls on this 90-degree axis. So everything about about Aquarius is asking us to be responsible in our rebellion, responsible in the change that we're seeking. And we are going to find a collective, almost undeniable is what I want to say, energy where we will be drawn to what is happening over there. We're going to be drawn to, like you said, sharing a post or following someone because we're not only curious, but we, again, can fight for someone else. We can see it from the outside perspective, what someone who is in it can't always see. And that's what Aquarius is so great at. It always, I know Aquarius and Aquarian friends who are like, I want to belong, but ooh, that also makes me cringe. And it's that same feeling of I want to help what's going on in Gaza, but it also makes me cringe. But if I can do X, Y, and Z that might make a difference, then yes, let me throw my hat into the ring even for just a moment.
Yeah, I definitely relate with the I want to belong, but not to this. I feel like the guilty by association energy feels very strong with this. My Venus is in Aquarius, so I definitely feel Aquarius energy a lot. And I feel like it explains a lot to me of why I feel detached from certain things. Even though I'm a Capricorn, I'm very detached from some things. And I think it's easier for me to have that energy. But I think too, like, we're speaking of all these things and it feels really big right now, but if you think about even like eclipse season, we talk about that, we lead up to it, and then we live it and we move through it. And so if you're just again remembering that what we're asked, like what spirit is asking of us, is that we just deal with anything that comes across our path. It's just not putting the blinders on. That's all it's asking us to do is instead of just closing the phone, maybe just share the thing. Take those little chances and like take the opportunities that are coming to you. And then if you are feeling confident and you feel like I could, step up and do this, then do that. But it's like anything. Talking about it in as like a future thing makes it feel bigger and unknown and, uncertain. But when you're in it, it's just asking you to like go with it. Keep moving forward. Keep doing the small things because it is a big thing when you continue. Consistency with anything is not easy, but it's more about not ignoring. It's not asking you to all of a sudden become an extrovert that goes out and does all of these big things and shows up in ways that are like overconfident. It's just saying that, in past where you have the guilt when you ignore something or when you don't do the small thing, just don't let yourself have that. Try to avoid the guilt. And that is where like holding on to the vision of someone somewhere else in a world that you're not a part of. If you consider that like you're helping someone else, then hold on to that. Hold on to whatever it is that moves you forward. And I think that's why that question, who or what is guiding you, I think that's why that felt so strong is you need to know what that light is, that light at the end of the tunnel, like what it is that's moving you forward and what's keeping you going.
And we've had so many examples this year of paradox, not only between the extreme of Aries and Libra self and others, these duplicates of full and new moons, the duplicate of the ace cards, the Hierophant. There's all of these examples of one truth can be true and what's its opposite. This and. So I encourage you, no matter how you move through this energy in the fall, what is your truth? And always open up and leave opportunity for there to be something else that comes along with it in some way.
Absolutely. I think that is great advice for anything moving forward. If you're not even sure exactly what it is you believe, then hold on to the things that you're learning and ask why. Why is it that way? Why do I believe that? Why do you ask people that? What I'm surprised at is the number of times if I ask someone why something, like a toddler, if you're just like, but why? If they can't answer, then why should you believe them? Even if someone's yelling it, like we've said a million times, I think in different contexts here, just because someone is the loudest doesn't mean they're the most right. Doesn't mean that they have the strongest point. It just means they have the most confidence. And so sometimes it takes a lot of people with a little confidence to overpower that. And you can do that. One more thing I just want to note, taking a quick left turn here before I forget, is that one thing we're going to do that is different so that you can hold on to this energy and make it a bit easier for you to not feel like you have to digest all of it right now and remember it for 6 months, is that we're going to create a PDF document for you so that it'll be a download. And it will have, for each month, it'll have the tarot card, the main couple points that I brought out of it, and then Emily's transits and astrology info for that month so that you can just look back at it to know what your focus can be. And if you're getting overwhelmed in the energy, it'll give you a couple of guiding lights for you for the month ahead.
We just really wanted to do this as a thank you to all of our listeners. And it will be going out not only in our newsletters, but then will be available for download after the podcast has gone live as well. Thank you all so much for listening. We enjoyed this re-recording. It came out very differently than the first one. I think there were messages that we maybe missed before that needed to be highlighted this time.
I definitely agree. As much as we were both throwing our hands in the air and asking why, I think Spirit always has a plan. And I think because we were lit up by that energy, it made it easier to be like, okay, there's got to be something else. So I think that integration time was actually really needed. And yeah, I hope that this resonates with everyone and that you get a little bit of a spark from it.
Thank you all so much for listening. Like we said, this will come out here in just a few weeks ahead of the summer solstice and will carry you through winter solstice of 2024. And we look forward to recording these big bonus episodes again later in the year.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.